welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is season 3 of the podcast, which means we took all of the wrestling content across the internet, dumped it into the randomizer, we fire it up, and it randomly selects a show for us to watch. Could be anything, from anywhere, from any time. And we've got a pretty deep cut here, and a pretty big show, the Tokyo Dome, for New Japan Pro Wrestling, February 10th, 1990.
Yes, New Japan Pro Wrestling Super Fight in the Tokyo Dome. Claimed attendance of just under 64,000. You can never be quite sure with attendances from Japan during this time period, but it sure as heck looked full. And yeah, this when the randomizer pulled this, I was very excited, Jeremy. And it also, you talked about, we pull stuff from every possible source. This is a show that we reviewed where we had to pull from multiple sources to get the entire full card. And man, if you are a New Japan World subscriber, they have screwed you over by not including 2 matches on the show, because those 2 matches, we'll get to it later, pretty crazy, pretty historically significant to some degree at least. But this show, there's a lot going on here. We've got 3 matches that are New Japan Pro Wrestling versus All Japan Pro Wrestling, a major debut, a huge tag team match main event, a generational tag team match main event with a rather significant special guest referee, and a lot of other things. So yeah, very much looking forward to this. We should note that if you are a fan like I was and Jeremy was of WCW, and your first exposure to Japanese pro wrestling as far as actually seeing a show from Japan on TV was the WCW New Japan Super Show, that took place in 1991. So this predates that by just about a year, a little over a year. And I don't know about you, Jeremy. I had seen some of this show. I had not watched the entire show yet on New Japan World / other clandestine sources. So was very excited when the randomizer pulled this for us.
No, I'm coming in ice cold because, like you mentioned, that Super Show was my introduction to Japanese Pro Wrestling in 1991, and I never went back to fill in the gaps. Anything that predates that has been selected via the randomizer or via our patrons over at our patreon.com/wrestling at random, where they choose shows for us to watch. And otherwise, no, I never went back to watch a lot of these older matches. And so this Tokyo Dome show, I had heard about some things, and we'll get to it later, but never got to see it, and so I went in pretty cold to a lot of this matchups, but I knew right away. I could tell, even not knowing, just by the card, that this was a lot of All Japan, New Japan build up here in matches. So that had to be a pretty big deal for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you look at the attendance, and when you watch the show, you can tell how full this building was. And it wasn't a scenario where you had New Japan versus All Japan all that often. Granted, here in the early 90s, it was sort of a golden era of interpromotional shows, whether it be, as we talked about, the Starrcade in Japan or WCW Japan Super Show, depending on where it was promoted. That show in 1991, you had 92 and 93 editions of that as well. But you also had this show here in 1990 with New Japan having All Japan representation on it. There was one show, only once, but one show with New Japan, All Japan, and the WWF. And then once the SWS promotion, short-lived as it was, splintered off and it did co-promoted shows with the WWF in the early 90s as well. So this was a rare show, but it was not a rarity, relatively speaking, to see promotions working together on a grand scale compared to, say, recent years in Japan.
So let's get through this. Take us through this opening contest, Adam. Who do we got here in the opener?
Yeah, it's an 11 match card, so there's going to be some things that we're going to blast through here. The opener, it's pretty interesting. It's Takayuki / Takashi Iizuka. If you're a more recent New Japan fan, and we've talked about Iizuka a few times on this podcast, including going back to Wrestle War 92, with the match, him teaming with Tatsumi Fujinami against the Steiner brothers in WCW. But here it is an even younger Takashi / Takayuki, as he was known then, Iizuka, taking on Osamu Matsuda, who to even people who are familiar with New Japan, that name might not ring a bell until you realize that this is young lion Osamu Matsuda before he became El Samurai.
That is crazy because, these two young guys, we've talked about Iizuka before. It still blows my mind that these are the same human beings that I would see later. But no, this was just very basic grappling, a lot of, just real basic stuff here. Totally fine. Everything was sound.
It was a young lion match. And the thing that was fascinating about watching it is that you could have transported this match into 2022 as we record this in linear time, and it would be almost no different from a high-end young lion style match you would see in New Japan currently. Really, the majority of the match, as you said, was just a lot of mat work, a lot of grappling, all very tight, done very well.
Yeah.
Iizuka was a little bit further along in his development at this point to Matsuda, and you could sort of see that by the way they both wrestled. But it was very basic until we got relatively close to the end. Matsuda flips out of an Iizuka suplex and hits a stone cold stunner. A stone cold stunner here in 1990 in Japan. Gets a big reaction, goes to the top, hits a drop kick. The Japanese rolling leg clutch hold, if you watch New Japan in recent times, it's the move that you see Sanada use quite often to get roll-up victories. So there's a great near fall there. Then we start going towards the finishing stretch. Iizuka blocks a go behind and hits an awesome sort of judo / sambo throw right into a rolling knee bar. Another great reaction when Matsuda gets the ropes.
Yeah, this was like a real good struggle and a good fight to get to the ropes for that break.
Yes. He's writhing in pain. It's funny too because he's a guy who would go on to wear a mask, but here he was very expressive and got some good sympathy from the crowd. We had a spine buster for Matsuda, jackknife, but only two. Matsuda with a German suplex, another 2 count. Iizuka counters a running forearm with an awesome Uranagi, and then hits a blizzard suplex hold, which the best way I can describe it is kind of a Uranagi or a T-bone suplex, but you bridge out, you hold on, you bridge out. That was his finisher at that time, and he got the win. So basic match, but it really picked up for the last minute or so. Super fun by the end. And I never tire of watching these sort of young lion style matches, and this was a fun way to start the show.
No, the formula, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it continued from all throughout the 90s to present day. Absolutely. Our next match, Akira Nogami with Jushin Thunder Liger as his partner take on the team of Sano and Pegasus Kid. So this match starts edited, and I'm already angry because I wanted the full unedited version of this match.
Yeah, super frustrating that this started edited, joined in progress. I think for some of the matches on the New Japan World version of this, they use the TV, the TV Asahi broadcast, because there's a very low quality full show version of this from a commercial tape that's floating around in the internet. And while there is some music that's dubbed, it does have entrances and it does have full matches. But here on the New Japan World version, we start a few minutes in, and just as we're about to start, I'm hyped because we have Akira Nogami teaming with Jushin Liger, who he would take on Liger a year later at that WCW New Japan Super Show that we talked about, and talk about a match that on the American broadcast was butchered. We talked about the editing there, that I believe they only showed 5 of the 16 minutes that we got to see on the Japanese broadcast. So not quite as bad here. But their opponents are Naoki Sano, as you mentioned, who was Liger's first real rival as a junior heavyweight once he donned the mask and the Liger character in Japan. They had an awesome series of matches, Jushin Liger and Naoki Sano, that highly recommend going back and checking out if you haven't ever seen those on New Japan World. And then teaming with Pegasus Kid, the masked Chris Benoit, which we'll give the disclaimer, Jeremy, that we always do, that if you're kind of taken aback by the fact that we're talking about a Chris Benoit match here on this podcast, don't worry. So are we. We shared our thoughts earlier, I believe in season 1, actually. Was it that Royal Rumble show?
Yeah, the Royal Rumble 2003.
Yeah. So you can go back and listen and when you hear us talk about how conflicted we feel and how obviously difficult it is to watch and talk about Chris Benoit matches, all of that still applies here.
It doesn't get any easier. No, that's for sure.
It does not, but we are going to just talk about the match itself here. And yeah, we're joined in progress. Pegasus Kid hits a drop kick, and Akira Nogami counters with an arm drag. And then we're about to kick into a higher gear because Jushin Liger tags in.
Yeah, Liger in with Pegasus, but snap suplex, and he tags in Sano. Sano has Liger over his shoulder, like the Canadian backbreaker position, then power bombs him for a 2.
Yeah, he appeared to be trying to channel Scott Norton's over the shoulder shoulder breaker from that Canadian backbreaker style position. Instead, just kills him with the power bomb. Akira Nogami makes the save. Liger is so great here, which he always was at selling being completely out cold as a guy is trying to pick him up. We've talked about it before that it does not make sense how a man who is covered from head to toe, there's not an inch of his skin other than the tips of his fingers and his lips that you can see. And Jushin Liger is one of the most expressive characters that you'll ever see in wrestling. I can't think of anyone else to compare it to. There's no one else. There's nobody else that could have pulled this character off to the level of effectiveness as a sympathetic babyface when times called for it, like Liger did.
That's absolutely incredible. And we see an incredible pile driver right here drilling Liger. Nogami makes the save.
Clearly, if we are not in the NWA in 1987, there is not a one save rule.
No. Liger hits an enziguri, tags Nogami in. Pegasus tags in as well. And Nogami hits these super high drop kicks. Loved him.
Yes, he some of the best drop kicks in wrestling history. You talk about Okada, you go all the way back and talk about a Paul Roma for a drop kick. Nogami right in there as well. He's one of those guys like Sano and like so many junior heavyweights from that era that were just overshadowed by how great Jushin Liger was and how dynamic and memorable of a character he was, and they sort of get forgotten as compared to the legacy of Liger.
We see the lip of Pegasus busted open. Tombstone by Pegasus on Nogami. He tags Sano back in. Liger tags back in, and Sano in the corner gets hit with a knee by Nogami, and then a clothesline by Liger, a double drop kick, and Sano gets sent to the corner. He does a flip off the top rope, but right into a German suplex by Liger for a 2 count.
This was awesome. He backflips off the top rope. Normally, when you see a wrestler do this, they would go over the top of the wrestler and land behind them. Instead, as Sano is backflipping off the top rope, Liger takes a step back, so he will still be behind Sano, catches him with the German suplex. Very cool. Also, really like that running double drop kick in the corner by Liger and Nogami. That's one of those things that I'm surprised more people don't do now.
Liger to the top. Pegasus grabs the leg of Liger, which allows Sano to drop kick Liger off the top to the floor. Sano then does a tope suicida, hitting Liger on the outside. In the ring, Sano puts Liger on his shoulders, and then Pegasus hits a top rope drop kick doomsday device.
I was just going to say, and I have all caps, doomsday device drop kick. Oh, awesome. My God. Again, let's just briefly recap here. This is February 10th, 1990.
This is quite some innovative offense for this 1990.
Match, if you put this in like the last 3 or 4 years of New Japan, this would be as good, if not better, and maybe significantly better than like every junior heavyweight tag title match that New Japan has had over the past couple of years. There was no junior tag titles back then, but like this is This is absolutely at that level.
Pegasus with a top rope diving headbutt, another save by Nogami, and Sano and Nogami then fight out on the floor. And then we see a suplex on the floor by Sano. That was brutal. In the ring, Liger rolls up Pegasus for a near fall, and the crowd is into all this action. They are on fire right now.
A very creative, almost sunset flip style roll up by Liger. As he said, only a 2. Crowd is super into it. Akira Nogami comes in, hits a running knee lift, and then hits a suicide dive with an assist from Liger, which I was amused by. It's like when the guy jumps off the top and you kind of sweep him down on a splash. That was kind of the deal from Liger. And then Liger hits this insane running somersault dive to the floor. He runs and vaults over the top rope to the floor. Again, 1990. It's easy to forget when you see Liger in later years, and by later years, I even mean into the late 90s, post brain surgery that he had, that he had scaled back the high flying, but back then, 1990, he was beyond revolutionary as a high flyer, just mind blowing.
No, that somersault flip over the top to the floor. Yeah, this wasn't just off the apron here. This was a big dive. Nogami off the top with a crossbody on Pegasus gets a 2 count. We get a belly-to-belly by Pegasus, and I note Owen Hart style for 2.
Yes, I wrote that. I guess that was taught in the dungeon. That was taught in Stampede, I guess, because, yeah, we've talked about earlier in the season that nobody does that belly-to-belly like Owen, but here we see it from Pegasus Kid. Then we get a jumping tombstone from Sano, and then they go all Public Enemy on us and hit the drive-by.
He does a... Pegasus off the top does a senton onto Nogami, and it breaks down into the 4-way.
Well, it's where it's with Sano holding the hands and flipping him down. Again, it's Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge style here. About the only way you'd ever compare all those wrestlers together, but in any event,
that's the one time. Yes.
Yes. Sano then grabs the Tiger Suplex hold, hits Akira Nogami with it. Pegasus is able to hold off Liger from making the save, and that's it. That's the match. Sano pins Akira Nogami with the Tiger Suplex hold.
Super fun, all action. There was not the pace was insane of this match. It was just nonstop, all action. Again, putting yourself into the eyes of 1990. These guys, how could they not have been your favorite if you went to this show?
For sure. And again, just think about Liger. And as a kid, seeing him in WCW, within a year of this, he was starting to show up in WCW, and man, it's mind blowing, and it's easy to see why. I think back to as a kid, it's like, well, yeah, I'm not shocked that I got into Japanese wrestling so heavily from seeing Jushin Liger, because seeing him now so many years later, he's still, again, you plug 1990 Jushin Liger into modern professional wrestling, and he's the most spectacular wrestler out there.
Who are these blonde outlaws in the next match here?
Yes, the blonde outlaws. It's Norio Hinaga, a favorite of this podcast, if you recall, from that match he had with Dean Malenko.
Oh, that's right.
That show, I believe, in season 1. He defended the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title over Dean Malenko. Norio Hinaga, not the most charismatic dude, but just a great mechanic in the ring. Hiro Saito, who I believe was also on that show. Then Tatsutoshi Goto, no relation to Hiroki Goto, and just, these are your classic sort of lower mid-card heel type of trio. They are taking on Kuniaki Kobayashi, who we saw on that Super Show from 1991, teaming with Shiro Koshinaka and Izuka in the famous Tim Horner is in Japan and the crowd is laughing match. I know you were a big fan of Tim Horner's not moonsault,
the best
in that match. So it's Kobayashi, Kentaro Hoshino, and a young, still junior heavyweight in the process of transitioning to heavyweight, clad in black trunks, Hiroshi Hase.
I popped huge for seeing Hiroshi Hase because I fell in love with him in that match with the Steiners. That was my first introduction at the Super Show, and we've seen him a few times here on this podcast. And holy cow, he's
He's
one of those guys that I forget is one of my favorite wrestlers until I see him again.
Incredible. And if you go back to watching those super shows when Jim Ross called them, clearly Hase was Jim Ross's favorite of the New Japan wrestlers. You can see why. Great amateur background, just unbelievable wrestler in every conceivable way. I've talked about it before on the Big Audio Nightmare that of any of the heavyweights of New Japan in sort of that 90s heyday golden period, he's the one that you take him in his prime and you plug him into modern New Japan, and he's right there with Tanahashi and Okada and Naito and all those guys. Just think of the incredible matches that he would have had at that point. But here, we got a 6-man tag. And
how old is Kobayashi here?
Oh, let me look that up, actually, while you start to talk about this match being joined in progress. I think Hoshino may have been even older.
Yeah, because this is joined in progress. And
I love Kobayashi, and I remember being so interested in him, like when I saw him in the Super Show match, just because he just had such a different look, and he looked like a wrestler from Japan from the 1970s.
Totally does. Yeah,
was still here. Yeah, he debuted in 1973. He would have only been 34 years old here. He was
That's
born
not
in
right.
He was born in 1956. Even with those hang burns, he was only 34 years old here. So he debuted at 17 years old in 1973. He stayed on the undercard until he was finally sent on his excursion in 1980.
Wow. No.
So it took him 7 years to go on excursion.
Well, we joined this in progress, like you mentioned, and he is running wild. Kobayashi's going nuts, and the people love some Kobayashi here. And he tags in Hase, and Hase he throws an awesome kick, and then they trade strikes. Hase backs him into the corner. Kobayashi tags back in, and he beats up everyone. And again, the crowd loving every second of this. This is we're off to a hot start.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Hase, that really cool back heel kick, awesome overhand chops. I don't know that there's anyone that's thrown those overhand chops that I've found to be more visually appealing than when Hase does it. There's not a lot to say about Goto, Hinaga, and Saito in this match. Hinaga he's the most interesting of the three of them as a wrestler, but still, they really don't do a whole lot here, which is totally fine because Kobayashi and especially Hase is who you want to see offense from here, and that's largely what we got.
That's what we got. Kobayashi countered an airplane spin into a sunset flip for 2, sent to the corner, and we get Hase hits him with a clothesline. Kobayashi comes in, he gets cut off. Kobayashi goes for a crucifix, but Goto just drops back and pins Kobayashi for the win.
Well, I think I discovered why you're saying Kobayashi looks old. I think that's Hoshino is who you're talking about, because it's Hoshino that gets pinned.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
it's this whole wacky thing where right before that, if you're a modern New Japan fan, you're familiar with Ryusuke Taguchi and the comedy that he does in his matches where, a guy will get, one member will go and hit the opponent in the corner with a move. Then the next team member will go and hit the opponent in the corner with the move. And then Taguchi will go and try to do it, and it doesn't happen. The guy gets his foot up or he moves out of the way. Same thing here with Hoshino. That happens. The crowd erupts in laughter. Hoshino then goes for a crucifix. Goto drops down into a Samoan drop of sorts and gets the pin.
We move to Brad Reinkins, another favorite of this podcast.
Bradley Reinkins. I can hear Ron Trongard in my ear right now.
Yes, taking us back to all the AWA shows we have against Victor Zangief. This feels like an AWA special here.
And Victor Zangief was actually he had done shots, so he would do shots for New Japan beyond this. New Japan had a relationship, Enoki had a relationship in Russia. They did a show in Russia, actually. Zangief and the guy we'll see in the next match, Hashimoto, very, very legit backgrounds as wrestlers. And so this is sort of in that different style fight mold that New Japan would promote quite often, particularly on big shows, mostly with Enoki, but with other wrestlers as well, where it really felt like a fight. Like this was, best way to describe this is if MMA had existed at this point, this is what it would have looked like if it was worked. This is just really snug mat wrestling, grappling. We should also note that Victor Zangief and the guy in the next match, Selman Hashimikov, appeared in WCW in late 1990. They were Team Russia in the Pat O'Connor International Memorial Tag Team Tournament. I believe they made it out of the first round. They defeated Troy Montour, and I can't remember his tag team partner, for the lamest Team Canada you've ever seen on any wrestling show or tournament.
And then it's hard to find good Canadian wrestlers. It's difficult.
I guess, he said with the sarcasm emoji. And then they went on to lose, I believe, in that tournament to the team of Mr. Saito and the Great Muta. But here, he is in his blue singlet. Brad Reinkins is in a similar blue singlet. I'm sure you enjoyed that.
They are. However, Zangief has amateur wrestling shoes on,
yes,
where Reinkins has just regular old wrestling boots. So
Victor Zangief also very bald and very hairy, and so you can tell him apart.
Yeah,
this dude is the most high level amateur wrestler looking guy you've ever seen in pro wrestling, is the best way I can describe him. But he is awesome. His mat work, his grappling, he is outclassing Brad Reinkins, who is no slouch, but he is outclassing him every step of the way. Just the movement from Zangief is beautiful throughout this match.
No, and everything is a struggle. Everything is amateur wrestlers defaulting to amateur wrestling. And so it's a lot of good grappling, as you'd expect. They struggle standing, locked up, a takedown by Zangief, and then Reinkins gets back up. He gets a takedown using his head. Zangief using his head to bridge and keep his shoulders off the mat. As you know, these guys are amateur wrestlers, and they're always just instinctively keeping their shoulders off the mat. This was this was super fun here for what it was. The crowd was like watching respectfully, but
yes,
not super into anything here. Zangief with an armbar takedown. Reinkins gets the ropes, and Reinkins throws the first strike of the match and then hits a suplex. Zangief hits a German suplex for 2. Zangief with a belly-to-belly overhead suplex, but it looked like shoot style.
This was an amateur wrestling, pop the hips and take the guy over. Dropped Reinkins right on his head. Sort of a rolling clutch hold out of that, only gets a 2. Brad then hits a pretty weak, I would say, German suplex. Does not bridge well, but then hits a beautiful Irish whip into a gut wrench suplex for a 2 count as well.
He hits like a gut wrench power bomb, and then Reinkins catches him in a small package for a 3 count out of nowhere, and the match just ends. And I'm like, I noticed that we had no commentary at all throughout this match.
Which was weird as well, which leads me to believe this was not part of the TV broadcast, but they put it on here on New Japan World. The other thing that I thought was most noteworthy about this, beyond just the wrestling of the two guys, did you notice who the referee was? Did you get a glimpse of who this referee looked exactly like?
I did not.
This referee is Katsuhisa Shibata, Katsuyori Shibata's dad.
Wow.
And it is crazy. Go back and watch it. The resemblance is striking, particularly Katsuhisa Shibata at this time in 1990 compared to what Katsuyori Shibata looks like now. Katsuhisa Shibata would have been 47 years old, 46 actually, 46 and a half at this point. Whereas Katsuyori Shibata, I believe, is like 43, 44 years old at this point. And so it's crazy, the resemblance.
Our next match also joined in progress. the aforementioned Russian, taking on Dr. Death, Steve Williams.
Yes, just 7 years before the Brawl for All, we've got Dr. Death, Steve Williams, in a match that it's not a shoot, but this is probably the closest thing he came to that in wrestling before the Brawl for All. Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Salman Hashimikov. These are two men from different sides of the world with nearly the same build and very similar athletic backgrounds. They do a lot similarly to what we saw in the previous match of amateur style stuff, but we do get more pro wrestling style in this toward the end.
Yeah, Dr. Death starts just beating on him, then picks him up and press slams him down. Hashimikov tries to suplex Dr. Death, but Williams ends up landing on top of him. We get a test of strength. Dr. Death breaks free of the test of strength and just flexes, which I found hilarious.
It's exactly the time to do that in the middle of this serious pro wrestling match. Love Dr. Death, Steve Williams. Absolutely.
We get a backdrop driver by Williams.
Yes, this was nasty, and this looked like something that Hashimikov had probably not taken before.
No, Hashimikov with a double leg. He walks Williams around the ring and then crazy. Takes him down. Power display.
Who has ever done this to Dr. Death, Steve Williams? Hashimikov, she said, grabs that double leg and has Dr. Death high in the air, takes him around the ring, and then slams him down hard to the mat, and they roll to the floor.
They start brawling on the outside. Williams rams him back first into the post and throws him back in the ring. Williams hits like a short clothesline after he couldn't send Hashimikov into the ropes.
This was awesome. Yeah, he's trying to shoot Hashimikov off the ropes, and Hashimikov is not... I don't think he knows exactly what's supposed to happen here at that point. And so Doc is like, okay, I'm just going to legit shoot short arm clothesline this dude instead. It was awesome. It's one of the things that, whether it be in these different style fights or as we'll see later in the All Japan versus New Japan matches, the borderline uncooperative stuff that happens is awesome. And it's what makes the match exciting and takes it to a higher level. It's something that if you weren't familiar with sort of the Enokiism era of New Japan, you'd see this stuff and you'd be like, what's going on? But when you really dig into it and watch it, it adds so much to it. Not as much here. Like, this was a cool spot, but particularly when we get into later matches, it's really what takes things to a fever pitch.
Punches by both men, stiff shots, trading stiff shots, and Williams then muscles him over for a suplex, missed an elbow in the corner, and then another double leg takedown where Hashimikov just drops him back, goes for the cover, and Williams rolls his shoulder up it too. This time, Williams hits a clothesline in the corner, then a running clothesline, Oklahoma Stampede power slam for the victory. Dr. Death, Steve Williams.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll say is that lariat right before the Oklahoma Stampede was really awkward and weird looking. I mean, obviously, Dr. Death, Steve Williams, great wrestler, even by this point, but lariats weren't necessarily a specialty. You could kind of see why there. But yeah, that's I actually, even though this was more pro wrestling style and maybe more high impact, I think I enjoyed the Zangief Reinkins match a little bit more. If we're rating those two matches, but from there we go to something completely different.
Yeah,
I believe the second to last AWA World Title match ever. It is Larry Zybyszko here in 1990, the AWA World Heavyweight Champion, and he's defending against a man who he was very familiar with. The AWA would have been very familiar with, Masa/Mr. Saito.
Yeah, AWA World Title on the line here, and they're feeling each other out early. It's a real slow start to this match.
You'll be shocked to know that, considering that it's Larry Zybyszko here.
Yeah.
In this match. The best part of like this first 5 minutes of very slow stuff is like Saito hits an arm drag, and Larry, the only way I can describe it is he's big mad, Larry Zybyszko style. Like he's a very loud, grunty, yelling wrestler. It's so out of place here, but it's oddly endearing.
His yelling is so loud, and there's no crowd reaction for the first 7 minutes. There's literally, I looked at the time, 7 minutes of nothing happening so far.
Yeah, the first time any real crowd reaction happens is when Saito hits a lariat for a 2 count and then goes for his finisher at that point, his submission finisher, the prison lock, which is that modified Indian deathlock that he has on, which if you're a modern fan of pro wrestling Noah, and you listen to the Big Audio Nightmare, you hear me talk about Masa Kitamiya, who was partially trained by and grew up idolizing Mr. Saito, and his basically everything he does, from his look, his gear, his build, all of his moves, including the prison lock, are 100% a tribute to / port of Mr. Saito here. Even the firing up that Saito does.
We'll get to that here.
I'm trying to move us along here. We got like 8 more matches still.
All right. So, Saito puts on like a kneeling figure 4, which I thought was awesome.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the prison lock.
That's the prison lock. Okay, yeah, he's pumping his fists, and the crowd. You're right. That's the first big reaction of the match. You get he puts him back in the prison lock, poses some more, and the crowd is into this now because Saito has willed them into this match where nothing is going on.
He's willed them into a Larry Zybyszko AWA World Title match in 1990. The prison lock and Saito doing it. It's fascinating because when have you seen, other than this, a submission move where the man executing the move is the one rallying the crowd in support of him? Usually it's the opposite. Usually the crowd is rallying behind the man who is on the verge of being submitted. But here, it's like they're doing that, but they're doing it for the guy that has the hold on. And it's just because Saito is just so damn fantastic being himself here.
He is. He hits 2 Saito suplexes and gets a 2 count, and the crowd literally thought that this was a title change here.
Yeah, they are very into this now by this point. Saito with some overhand chops, great leg kick, but Larry Zybyszko catches it, and just like it's Thunder in late 2000, he thinks that he can just hit a low blow, and he can. He hits a blatant mule kick. The crowd is irate. I'm irate here.
So mad. Oh, thunderous poos.
No disqualification, no admonishment, really. But they're into this. We get big Mr. Saito chants as Larry is kicking at Saito and puts him in an abdominal stretch. But Mr. Saito, knowing how much we don't want to sit through Larry Zybyszko doing an abdominal stretch, immediately hip tosses out.
Yeah, he ends up nailing him with chops. He's knocking Larry into the ropes where he gets hung up. He's on the apron. A clothesline by Saito over the top rope. As Zybyszko's coming back into the ring, Saito rolls him up in a small package for 2. A small package by Zybyszko for 2. Larry misses a drop kick. Saito then drills him with another Saito suplex. Small package, and he gets the 3 this time. New AWA champion Masa Saito, and the Tokyo Dome celebrates. This was awesome.
Absolutely nuts, and rightfully so. This match was extremely boring for the first 10 minutes or so, but the end of this match, like the last 4 or 5 minutes, were awesome. And it wasn't just Saito. Zybyszko was great in the last few minutes of this, the back and forth. My favorite thing about this match, one of my favorite finishes or ways to finish a match that I've seen in a long time, is the fact that Saito hits his finisher, the Saito suplex, and then locks on an inside cradle, because of course an inside cradle is a more tight pinning combination than a normal pin. I want to see this come back. I want to see dudes put on an inside cradle after they hit a big move and get a win that way. That was awesome.
Yeah, very much appreciated that. And now match 7 and 8 of this show are missing from New Japan World's streaming service at the time of this recording. Yeah, so we had to find it elsewhere on the internet.
A damn shame. We had to plumb the depths of the dark web. I feel like I had to deal some drugs to see these couple matches, but we were able to do it. And thank God, because this is All Japan versus New Japan. The first one, it's Kengo Kimura and Osamu Kido, who are two still very good, but older wrestlers in New Japan at this point that were guys who you would see their names in the magazines, but you would never actually see them because they wouldn't be on the super shows. They are representing New Japan Pro Wrestling. They are taking on Yoshiaki Yatsu and Jumbo Tsuruta of All Japan. We are getting to see, and we've talked about quite a bit how much we love Jumbo Tsuruta here on this show via some of the 80s and very early 90s
Jumbo.
All Japan that we've watched, and just how he's in that discussion of best wrestlers ever. And when you watch the basic things that he does with so much more acceleration and follow through than anyone else, you just can't help but appreciate him. But we're seeing Jumbo Tsuruta in a New Japan ring.
And the people are so excited that Tsuruta and Yatsu are here, and they are going nuts. They are psyched for this match.
Yeah, this crowd reaction, it's hard to put into words if you've never seen one of these interpromotional matches between two companies in Japan that are both red hot. The entrances themselves are something to see just how over these guys are.
Yeah.
And then just the crowd heat before the match even starts.
I love their jackets, though. Tsuruta and Yatsu with the black jackets with their names on it. Looked awesome. We've got bad video quality. And the first thing I notice here as the jackets are off, all four men have the exact same outfit on. This is why I couldn't get mad about Brad Reinkins and in the earlier match.
They all had the short black tights, which was fairly customary at this point in Japan. So yeah, definitely.
I just felt bad for the folks in the upper deck of the dome.
They did have that really nice big screen.
They're watching on the big screen.
You would have never seen in the United States in any arena in 1990 that high quality of a big screen. So that was helpful, I'm sure. But yeah, we get all four men brawling to start.
We're off to the races immediately. Jumbo eats a flying knee. This was just a hot start.
Yeah, a big leg lariat from Kengo Kimura on Jumbo. Forearms in the corner on Jumbo. Osamu Kido is in the chop and drop kick on Jumbo, but only two. Tsuruta fights back and hits the high knee and the big O call. And the All Japan fans that are there are going crazy. The New Japan fans are making noise as well. Really, this match, the next match, there's just this sustained roar throughout this match from the 60,000+ fans who are here. And then there are points, obviously, where they pop even more, but just this sustained roar is it's wild. Like this, and you understand it because, again, you are in the Tokyo Dome for a New Japan show, and Jumbo Tsuruta is there. That is not normal. It's very exciting.
Yeah, Yatsu runs wild with headbutts. Jumbo comes in, hits a big boot on Kimura, and then Kido tags in with Jumbo. He takes Jumbo down into a Fujiwara armbar. Jumbo back in control. He hits a slam and tags Yatsu back in. He grabs Kido in a bear hug and then a throw. Goes for a scorpion deathlock, but you get an awesome roll-through counter into a leg lock. This was a great transition here.
Yeah, this was beautiful. That leg lock, like you said, that counter from Kido, that's, again, I can't remember the last time I saw anyone counter a scorpion in that way. That bear hug into the belly to belly by Yatsu was awesome. Yatsu is one of those guys that kind of like some of the wrestlers we've talked about on this podcast. Sort of going back and watching a lot of 80s All Japan just separately for my own fun over the past year or two. Yatsu is one of those guys that I grew to appreciate much more than I did when I was younger. Just really, really good stuff here from him. I also love how at this point when Kido has the leg lock on Yatsu, Jumbo is standing on the top rope threatening to come off and make the save, but the ref stops him. Jumbo Tsuruta is just the greatest.
So great. Kimura back in, hits a standing drop kick. Yatsu hits a side suplex and tags Jumbo in, and Jumbo unloads with some awesome uppercuts.
Yes, those European uppercuts, which when you talk about Jumbo Tsuruta, and we mentioned it before, that he came up through the ranks, whether it be, on his multiple excursions, time that he spent outside of Japan in the US and elsewhere, or when he was in Japan, the guys that he was in the ring with, the fact that you're in the ring with Terry Funk or Dory Funk every night, you can't help but absorb things. And these are straight up Dory Funk European uppercuts.
But Kimura fights back with punches and great strikes. They double team Jumbo in the corner, swinging neckbreaker by Kido for 2. They trade big shots until Jumbo knocks him down with a forearm, tags Yatsu back in. He fights with Kimura, who tried to break up a pin attempt. Jumbo tags in. It looked like Kimura kicked him low and then hits a clothesline. Again, poor quality. It was hard to tell.
Yes, yeah. This is a people complain about New Japan World video quality. Try watching these two matches on the dark web like we did, and then you'll be loving your New Japan World subscription.
A double team suplex on Jumbo. Jumbo, after a back suplex, tags Yatsu back in. Yatsu and Jumbo smash Kimura with knees to the front and back at the same time.
Yeah, this was awesome. A double high knee, one from the front, one from the back. Yatsu then with the Ric Flair style knee breaker. Looks like he's going to go for the figure 4, but instead Yatsu here, apparently trying to show that he is the All Japan equivalent of Masa Saito, he puts on his own version of the prison lock.
Yeah, Yatsu, after getting beaten on, hits a power slam and makes a tag to Jumbo. He runs in for a clothesline, but Kido takes him down into a Fujiwara armbar.
This was awesome. This Fujiwara armbar takedown from Kido was great. I'm so happy we got to see this match, not only because of just seeing Yatsu and particularly Jumbo here, but seeing a guy like Kido, who we haven't had, and even I haven't had as much exposure to as I would have liked.
I knew nothing about Kido.
Yeah. And just seeing like these guys that you would always see in results, again, like in the PWI, and you wouldn't necessarily think much of, and then seeing both him and Kimura here, they are both great professional wrestlers.
Jumbo gets to the ropes for a break. He gets up, Jumbo gets up, comes at him again, and again gets taken down into the armbar.
So awesome.
Yatsu has to come in to make the save. Jumbo catches Kido coming off the ropes. He falls back and hits a hot shot.
Yes.
All 4 men are now in the ring. We get a Thez press by Jumbo, and he gets the pin. This felt like it came out of nowhere, but this was a super fun match.
The pin felt like it came out of nowhere. I was just thrilled that we got an actual finish because, granted, this is a little bit coming out of the era of non-finishes, but still, we're still pretty close, particularly in All Japan. And yes, this is New Japan, but still pretty close to that era we've talked about on previous podcasts where you can't really go in expecting there to be a satisfying finish because it'll probably be some sort of count out DQ draw situation. Here instead, Jumbo gets a Thez press, like you said, gets the win. This was very good. I wouldn't call the match great, but the atmosphere and just the
fun
scene of seeing Jumbo in this environment, seeing Yatsu, seeing Kido and Kimura do their thing. Only disappointment about this was that we never got to see Jumbo hit the lariat.
We did not.
But he seemed so happy, so I was happy for him. This was great fun. And then that brings us to the second All Japan versus New Japan match. And this one has even more sort of jumbled up, I wouldn't say loyalties, but just when you look at where these guys' careers were and had gone, it's Riki Choshu and George Takano representing New Japan. However, Riki Choshu, longtime New Japan guy that then went to All Japan in the mid 80s, as we've talked about on previous podcasts, in a seismic shift in Japanese wrestling, and then had returned to New Japan. They're taking on Tiger Mask. This is the second iteration of Tiger Mask. Mitsuharu Misawa is who is under the mask here, and Genichiro Tenryu. Things to note here. Thank God, even though the video quality is terrible, that we had this version to watch, because 2 of the best entrance themes in the history of pro wrestling. Tenryu comes out, and I'm grooving to the Tenryu music. And then Riki Choshu's music, Power Hall hits, And I am reminded once again that this is, for me, hands down, the greatest wrestling entrance music ever. The combination of the music, the tension, the way it builds, and then the fact that the crowd just loses their minds whenever this music happens, whether it be here in 1990 or just a couple years ago when Riki Choshu finally had his retirement match. It is top tier entrance music.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to see all of that here. Choshu and Tiger Mask have a brief start, but then Tenryu gets in with Choshu, and
this is where it gets crazy. These two guys, going back to, like I said, All Japan, when Choshu made the jump, they had some wild, heated, great singles matches, and this feels every bit of that. The crowd, you could tell, knowing that and having seen those matches, is ready for this, and they're going hard at each other. This is wild. There's so much heat. There's so much history, and this is where what I talked about earlier comes into play, where not everything looks smooth. The majority of it doesn't, and that's what makes this so great, because it's within the confines and the construct of pro wrestling, these two guys trying to kill each other. And, it's like the difference between a scripted WWE promo where two people argue and they let each other finish what they're saying before they jump in and say what they're going to say, versus like an old school Jim Crockett Promotions promo where Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair are just yelling at each other. Same deal.
Yeah, after he starts by just slamming him, chin lock, we get the head scissors on the mat, and Choshu lays in some shots and tags in Takano. He comes in with an elbow off the top rope and then hits a high drop kick to Tenryu.
Yeah, big response here on that. And this is where I am excited, because it's like, here we go. Here's another guy who we maybe haven't seen as much as others. I've seen Takano, but I haven't seen anywhere near as much of him, as a lot of the other guys, that we've talked about earlier and that we'll see later in the show. And right away, dude is incredible here early on. The middle kicks, the drop kick. I am ready to see what he can do here in this match.
Tiger Mask tags in. He hits a drop kick, a flying crossbody for 2.
How about Takano jumping into that crossbody?
I was just about to say that. Yeah, I love
beautiful.
when guys jump into the crossbody. A modern reference would be the way that Jamie Hayter took the Riho crossbody on the floor, jumping into it. I love it.
The first person that I recall seeing take a crossbody in that way, and that's what we mean when we say jumping into it. It's the person taking it, leaving their feet, jumping off the mat so that the impact looks so much better as the opponent hits into them. Of all people, Bubba Ray Dudley was a master at doing that. Whatever else you have to say about the guy, and I'm not the biggest fan of him these days, he was always great at doing that as well.
Takano, after a kick, tags Choshu back in. He goes for the Scorpion Deathlock and has this dramatic pause before turning it over. Here's a professional who knows how to milk every little bit of emotion out of a crowd here. This was great.
I wrote almost the exact same thing. I have Choshu going for the Scorpion. I always love how he hesitates and slowly puts it on to really milk the crowd response. This is why we do a podcast together.
Takano tags in and comes off the top and starts working over the back of Tiger Mask. Tons of kicks from Takano. You want to talk about seeing Takano work. Watching him lay in these kicks, man, he can throw them.
He can throw them. He can move. He's a big guy too. Like, he's not super bulky, but he's tall. He's not slight, but he can move those kicks. And those kicks, by the way, no kick pads. So just wearing the short black boots does not look fun to take those.
Tiger suplex for 2. Choshu.
Tiger suplex by Takano, we should mention.
By Takano, yes.
On Tiger Mask.
Choshu tags, and Tiger Mask is able to tag Tenryu in, and then we get big running clotheslines in the corner on Choshu, and Tenryu starts laying in some chops. Tiger Mask comes back in. We see a gut-wrench suplex, and only a 1 count. I love that.
Maybe my favorite spot of this match is when Choshu tries to hit a snap mirror, and Tenryu does not go over for it at all. This is the uncooperative goodness that I am here for. This if you see this and you watch this match, this takes the match to another level. People are like, oh my God, these guys really hate each other.
Yeah, Tenryu and Choshu in. He goes for his scorpion on Tenryu, but tags in Takano before turning him all the way over.
Yeah.
And then they trade big strikes, and Tiger Mask tags back in.
Well, they trade big strikes, but you're underselling this. Takano comes in, he hits some short knees, he hits a couple slaps, and then Tenryu just starts murdering him with slaps and forearms. Takano fights back and knocks him down, knocks Tenryu down with a shove in the middle of this strike battle. This is so great. I am about to propose to this match.
Yes,
I'm down on one knee, ring out in front of me for this match.
Yeah, this is a great strike battle, and then Tiger Mask tags back in, and he will not be outdone with kicks as he starts throwing big kicks.
Yeah, spin kick, middle kicks, roundhouse kicks from the other side, an axe kick, but Takano comes back with kicks of his own and enziguri and a picture-perfect, beautiful German suplex.
Choshu tags in, and they hit a spike pile driver on Tiger Mask.
This is a spike pile driver that looks like it. If they did motion capture, which they didn't, for No Mercy in that series of games, the animation clearly was pulled from like Ricky Choshu doing a spike pile driver. This was awesome.
Tiger Mask takes Choshu down near Tiger Mask corner. Tenryu on the outside just sticks his leg in and starts laying kicks in from the outside.
Oh, this is where this match hits another gear. When Tenryu comes in and he starts hitting Choshu with these.
Oh my God, these kicks are so brutal.
We would call them Kawada kicks in modern times, but Tenryu's predating Kawada here with the Kawada kicks. Choshu's selling is great here. It's not something that you necessarily associate him with, but he's great doing this. Tenryu then, he's got him up. He's hitting hard chops, and then out of nowhere, Choshu from a dead stop hits a running Ricky Lariat. I want to see these two men beat each other up for the rest of my life.
It's so great. Tenryu, he goes to the top, but Takano hits a back suplex off the second rope. All four men are in.
Oh, let's back that up. He hits a back suplex, like a German suplex off the top rope. In 1990, he is on the second rope and hits a German suplex. What?
Yes.
And the spot before that, which we have to mention, where Choshu is getting tagged back in, and he's halfway in, halfway out of the ring. He's ducking his head through, and Tenryu comes at him full force and catches him with a lariat as he's getting into the ring. God, I love this match, and I love those two men fighting each other.
No, this is great. All four men are in the ring. We get a Choshu lariat to Tenryu, and then Choshu turns into a kick in the head by Tiger Mask.
Oh.
Takano then wipes out Tenryu on the outside with a plancha over the top.
But it looks like he busts his ankle while he does it. He's fine, but it looks like he broke his ankle.
In the ring, Choshu grabs Tenryu. He tries a Saito suplex, but Tenryu shifts his weight, lands on top of Choshu. Tiger Mask off the top with a drop kick to Choshu. He goes to the top again, hits a frog splash for 2.
This is where it's like, yeah, Tiger Mask is Misawa. That frog splash that's a Misawa frog.
That exactly was. Tiger Mask holding his knee after the frog splash. And then Choshu spots it. And he starts attacking the injured knee. He holds Tiger Mask in a belly-to-back suplex position as Takano comes off the top with an elbow. This was good double team. Choshu then puts the scorpion on Tiger Mask, but a huge Tenryu boot breaks it up.
Yes. Again, more than one save allowed here in this match.
Takano drop kicks Tiger Mask to the floor. He hits.
This is then where the Pescado happens, where it looks like he busts his ankle.
Yes, he hits that onto Tiger Mask outside. Tiger Mask is on the apron. Takano's trying to pull him onto the floor.
Like with a waist lock, like almost a German suplex type position, where Takano is standing on the floor, and
Tiger Mask is on the apron.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Choshu comes off the ropes and hits the lariat, knocking Tiger Mask down to the floor. Inside, Tenryu's with Choshu, just fighting. These guys are fighting.
They're fighting. They're almost like grappling. They're like hard grappling, trying to throw each other over, and they can't. This is so great.
Tiger Mask tries a dive over to the top to the floor and misses.
Yeah, Takano just calmly moves out of the way, gets back in the ring. Tenryu hits an enziguri with him.
Tenryu and Choshu still fighting on the inside while all this is happening on the outside.
Yes.
Takano flies in with a kick to Tenryu, and then all four men are in again. Choshu lariats Tenryu. Then Tenryu lariats Takano to the outside.
These lariats, oh my God, the sweat flying. This is awesome.
Turns around into a Saito suplex and a Scorpion Deathlock by Choshu. Tiger Mask, he's able to slide back in at 19. And Takano is counted out. So he
makes a valiant dive in at like 20.5.
So your winners by countout, Tiger Mask and Tenryu. This is one of those matches. I don't know how long it went, but it felt like 5 minutes.
I think it was right around 19 minutes. Let's see. This was 18 minutes and 59 seconds. It flew by. This was a thrill ride of a professional wrestling match that even if it didn't have a pinfall or submission finish, by the standards of sort of a non-finish count out, double count out type of thing, it was more satisfying than most. It was, with the getting back in at 19, Takano barely missing getting back in. This was like the previous match we talked about. The Jumbo match was fun. This was great. This was just
great wrestling, and
particularly the Choshu Tenryu stuff was incredible. Tiger Mask was very good, and then Takano was one of those guys that was just a revelation here. He was fantastic.
Yeah, and then so going back to New Japan World, you could pick back up now at the IWGP Heavyweight Championship title match. Big Van Vader, the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, defending against the challenger, All Japan's own Stan the Lariat Hansen.
Yeah,
now,
talk about a dream match. These two guys wrestling each other at this time, being the sort of the top foreign monsters in each promotion. This was as big as it got.
Yeah, two top foreigners battling for the IWGP title. I stayed on the dark web to watch the intros for this match, and Stan Hansen comes in being all crazy Stan Hansen,
whipping fans as he's coming to the ring as he's wont to do in Japan.
This was great. Followed by Big Van Vader coming out. He's got the helmet on. He takes the helmet off. It's smoking.
Yes.
Loved
blowing
everything.
The smoke. The best visual presentation of Vader ever was having that crazy headdress, which if you recall, when we went to WrestleCon in 2019, Vader's son was there selling the Vader book, and he had the headgear there.
We got to see it in person.
We got to see the headgear in person. So that was very cool. From there, we flash back over to, as you said, the New Japan World version.
So I did not, personally.
Well, I did. And what we had was Kevin Kelly on the call, doing a From the Archives, obviously post-produced, Kevin Kelly calling Vader versus Hansen. And he was great here, talking about the history of both guys, laying out why this was such a big deal, and also telling us that there was going to be something that happened in this match that was absolutely grotesque, and just warning us that if you have a weak stomach, you maybe shouldn't watch. I knew coming into this match, Jeremy, that this was the legendary, infamous Vader loses his eye and has to jam it back into his head in the match. You did not going into this, correct?
No. So I was just gonna watch the entrances, and then I was gonna flip back over to New Japan World, and hear Kevin Kelly on the call here. But didn't switch over because they wasted no time pushing and shoving and getting right into it, and they're just laying in these big shots, and I'm like, oh my god, these strikes, and I'm into this match, and so I didn't flip back over, and like I said, this is still the poor video quality, and I'm like, oh no, is this that match? Like, and I'm like, I had heard of the match, but I've never seen it.
Oh, you've never seen this before?
No,
okay.
Never seen it. I knew it happened from just Big Van Vader lore, but I never saw it. So as the match as we're like a few minutes into the match, you've just got, big forearms by Hansen, and then Vader takes Hansen down by the arm, and when he gets up, he takes his mask off, and that's when I'm like, oh god, is his eye out? Is this that match? And that's when I immediately switched over to the better quality, and I switched over to New Japan World, and like you mentioned, Kevin Kelly tells us, oh, we're gonna see some stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is that match, this is that happening. So I rewatched all of that, and then.
Well, thankfully on the New Japan World version, they actually edit the moment where the eyeball is out and gets put back in, which, as someone who saw this as a kid on like an 8th generation dub of a tape, it was bad enough then. I really did not need to see it in higher quality, much clearer video here on New Japan World. So I thank them for doing that. But yeah, like we're not exaggerating here. We're early on in this match. It starts off with just haymakers. And then early on, Vader loses his eye. His eyeball comes out of his head. He has to shove his eyeball back into his head. And then immediately his eye starts swelling because of course it does. He just put his eye back in his head. And so the swelling is so immediate and so severe that he has to, for the first time ever in Japan, take his mask off, which that alone gets a crazy reaction and ramps up the crowd more than they already were. And this is all, by the way, super early in this match. This is a match that is clearly one of the biggest draws for this show. It's the IWGP Heavyweight title. It's Vader and Hansen. And so what are they going to do? Well, normally what you would do is stop the damn match.
Oh, yeah.
But instead, because it is Big Van Vader, it is Stan Hansen, they are insane. Vader is ungodly tough. They just do the match.
They do this match exactly how this match was to be done. And like after like minute 2 where his eye had to be put back into his head, it was crazy.
By his own hand. This is not surgery.
No.
He just shoved it back in.
Shoved it back in.
His eye area just immediately swells up. You can't even make out that there's an eye there.
The swelling is so gross. Like it's just like his eye is just like another head at this point. It's so swollen. It's
imagine
crazy.
in a UFC fight, or even sometimes in wrestling, you'll see a guy with like a huge hematoma on his forehead from taking a headbutt or taking a knee. Just imagine that. But that is your eye.
So what do you do after you just put the eye back in your head? You took the mask off because it's putting too much pressure on the swelling on your injured eye. Obviously, you whip Stan Hansen to the corner and you hit an avalanche.
Yes.
We're back in it.
You do Vader things, and that's exactly what happens. He misses an avalanche in the corner and gets back suplexed. This is where Kevin Kelly starts telling us in detail about the eyeball. And I just can't. Like, I'm covering my ears because even though we didn't see it, I'm seeing the after effects. I remember seeing it like 20 years ago on tape. And I also have a serious thing with eye things, and I just can't handle it in general. It's why I don't wear contacts, because I can't deal with putting the finger near my eye to get the contact in. And so needless to say, this is much worse than that for me. So they're going to do a Vader Hansen match nonetheless.
Hansen takes him down, puts him in a chin lock, and he's got to be like, are we? What's going on? And obviously,
I don't
Vader
think there's a moment of hesitation from Hansen when Vader takes the mask off and he's like shaking his head around trying to figure out what's going on. Hansen is right there trying to throw punches already, and Vader is like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah, he's like, "Wait,
give me 3 seconds so I can process that my eyeball just came out and it's back in, and then we can beat each other up."
And you can really see how swollen his eye is from this angle and this chin lock. It's messed up. Vader then continues. He's laying in big punches. He charges in, misses an avalanche, and Hansen hits the belly-to-back suplex. Hansen with a jumping tackle, which I always love.
Yes, it's not quite a pounce. It's a tackle. That's the only way you can describe it.
He kicks Vader out to the floor. Vader gets posted. Hansen gets dropped across the barricade, knocked into the first row.
Yes. By the way, Vader gets posted right after his eyeball leaves him and then returns forcibly in both instances.
Back in the ring, Vader goes to work with heavy body shots, working over the ribs.
He hits a short lariat to the kidneys. In addition to these punches to the ribs and kidneys, he actually hits a lariat. There are so many cameramen at ringside. We should mention, like, there has to be 30 to 35 cameramen.
Oh, this is so huge. Yeah.
When I say cameramen, I mean photographers. In addition to the television cameras, it's one of those things that you forget about Japanese wrestling at that time, just how insane the media coverage was. We definitely see it here. This is, again, it's Vader just being Vader. Right after all this happened. It's wild. The other thing I just have to jump in and say is that the crowd responses here and every single time where they're brawling on the floor and then go back into the ring it's incredible. And it's a direct reaction to the fans being conditioned to so many times in big matches, interpromotional matches, the like, that there would be a double count out. It's the thing that people get the most excited about here is that they get back in the ring.
Yeah, the biggest thing here is Vader's just beating him down every time they're on the outside. And you know, Stan Hansen at this point, rarely do you see him take a beating like this. And he really did at the hands of Vader. He gave Vader a ton in this match.
I'll say it's a much more believable beating than the beating that Bob Backlund put on Stan Hansen in that cage match.
That's on our Patreon bonus content. Yeah,
that match irked the hell out of me. Here, I can buy Stan Hansen, even if it's a one-eyed Van Vader. I can buy Stan Hansen being beaten down by Vader.
Power slam by Vader for 2. Vader goes to the top, hits a flying clothesline, another 2 count. On the mat, Vader pins the arm of Stan Hansen down, exposing the ribs, and he just starts laying in huge elbow shots.
It's like he's Bryan Danielson here with these elbows. They're only to the ribs instead of the head, but yeah, he's laying them in hard. It's not as if these guys were going to go light on each other to begin with, but you have to think what happened in the opening moments of this match kind of took the physicality to an even higher level.
Which for normal people it would go the opposite direction, but these guys it went. Yeah, they turned into they turned into the skid here, and they just went.
Yeah, they leaned in. They did not go away from the violence here at all once it started.
Vader clotheslines Hansen, who falls out to the floor again. Vader misses an avalanche and hits the post. Hansen then sends Vader inside.
People lose their minds again because the match will continue. Hansen, he's
putting the boots to Vader. Yeah.
It's a hard knee to the head, like a short knee, which did not look comfortable. This is where you notice that Vader's eye is even more of a mess. They're back out onto the floor. Hansen hits a running shoulder that sends Vader over the guardrail into the crowd. They're fighting on their knees in the front row, like the VIP area at the front of the on the stage. Hansen throws Vader back in, and we get another huge pop because the match will continue.
Back elbow by Hansen for 2. Hansen gives the sign that he's going to go for the lariat. Vader hits a drop kick instead, because of course he does.
A great drop kick. We've marveled about Hansen hitting a drop kick in previous matches, I think at least once that we've reviewed on this podcast. We've talked about Jim Neidhart, Road Warrior Animal, like guys that you wouldn't expect hitting drop kicks, but Vader here with a drop kick, and it's fantastic.
I'm rubbing my eyes constantly watching this because I'm looking at Vader's eye and I can't stop rubbing my eye.
Yeah, no, it's sympathy pain for sure.
Oh my God.
He's shaking his head, like shaking his eye, trying to like.
I'm rubbing my eye talking about Vader's eye right now. I can't.
Absolutely.
This is brutal.
Then from there, Vader hits some rib punches that each miss each other with lariats, and then each separately hit each other with these. I cannot do justice to how hard these lariats were, how great the camera work was from the ringside shot opposite, on the opposite side of the ring, shooting toward them. The sweat flying off these men as they each hit each other with lariats. Again, you have to go and watch this, and it's probably, of any of the Japanese shows matches that we've talked about here on this podcast, it's the most easily accessible one. Literally because it's on New Japan World, and also because it does have Kevin Kelly guiding us through on English language commentary.
Vader with a shot. Hansen bounced off the ropes with the lariat. Vader stumbles a little but doesn't go down, and they brawl back to the floor again. They fight deep into the crowd. They tumble over a guardrail deep in the crowd. And then the ref finally calls for a double countout. This brawl was insane out into the people. Vader, he broke his nose in this match.
Yeah, exactly. That tells you how violent this match was, that he had a broken nose and nobody was talking about it. Like,
no, because of his eye. And, one other point I wanted to make about Vader, before he took this mask off, this is my favorite style of Vader mask.
Yes, the full mask.
It's
not
a full
weird,
mask,
like S&M thing. Yeah.
Yeah, this is super cool looking.
The black mask with the red lightning bolts, and he's got the similar design on his trunks and singlet. This is peak Vader.
Vader would go on to hold the IWGP title for 374 days during this reign.
Why not? Particularly after the performance that he put in here. This match went just under 16 minutes, and about 14 of them took place with his eye barely / not being an eye at all. We should also note this is one of only 2 times that Vader and Sam Hansen ever wrestled each other in singles matches. This was the first. They then wrestled each other at Wrestle War 91 in March of 1991 for WCW, in a match that also went to a non-finish. I think it was just a no contest of sorts. Obviously, the eyeball stayed intact, but it was a wild brawl as well. So,
who is this opponent for Bam Bam Bigelow in this next one? I'm sorry. Pardon me, Crusher Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yes, Crusher Bam Bam Bigelow, as he was known in Japan. His opponent, a controversial figure throughout his pro wrestling career. Here, this is his first appearance, his first pro wrestling match in New Japan. Only his third wrestling match ever, as he did 2 in the same night in November of 1989 for the AWA of all things. This is Koji Katao, the former Yokozuna, the 60th Yokozuna in sumo wrestling in Japan. He was forced to leave sumo after a falling out with his stable master, Tatsunami, in 1987, and became a pro wrestler in 1990. So this is as far as a star goes, coming from outside of the world of pro wrestling, having a former Yokozuna who was forced to leave the number one sport in Japan and then goes into pro wrestling. Like, you couldn't really have a bigger deal than this. So it just added to, again, we talked about, we've got the New Japan versus All Japan stuff on this show. We had those different style fights earlier. And then we have the New Japan / for all intents and purposes, pro wrestling debut of Koji Katao.
A quick arm drag takes Bigelow down, hits another. Bigelow with a shot, a headbutt, and they both hit a shoulder block. Nobody moves. Bigelow back to the headbutt. Katao matches him and with a headbutt and a slam. Bigelow catches him with a clothesline, a headbutt, then throws him over the top to the floor. Bigelow keeps knocking him off the apron, won't let him in. suplexes him back inside, gets a 2 count. A chin lock by Bigelow. Bam Bam then he charges and misses in the corner. We get big kicks by Kitao. A lariat, he gets a 2 count. Bigelow cuts him off with a DDT, gets a 2 count. Then Bigelow puts his head down, and Kitao unloads with huge kicks. This is a brave man, Bam Bam, taking kicks from an inexperienced guy like this.
Oh yeah, no, Koji Kitao is he's a nasty dude. That's so I referenced earlier SWS. And Koji Kitao, after leaving New Japan, not that long after this, his last match in New Japan was July 22nd. He joined SWS, and he had a very, very controversial match with John Tenta, Earthquake, in which basically he broke kayfabe, refused to sell Tenta's offense, openly stalled, and legitimately tried to gouge John Tenta's eyes out. Eventually Kitao kicked the referee and was disqualified. He then picked up the microphone and in a shoot promo announced that wrestling was fake and Tenta could never really beat him.
When was this?
This was in 1991. He was fired from SWS as a result. As promotion officials were concerned, he might further expose the business to national newspapers. The Great Kabuki was also eventually relegated and later fired from SWS from his booker position when officials discovered that he had told Tenta to stiff Kitao in an attempt to provoke Kitao's temper and get him expelled. So an absolute mess.
Wow.
It's crazy too, because we've got this match that took place in February 1990. He leaves New Japan a few months later. He joins SWS in November of 90. He then appears at WrestleMania 7, teaming with Tenryu to defeat Demolition. And then shortly thereafter, this whole mess with Tenta occurs.
Yeah, this match ends with just a leg drop and a 3 count for Koji Kitao beating Bam Bam Bigelow. And then we go to our main event of the evening. You've got the team of Masahiro Chono.
Pre-Aristus, pre-broken neck. He's not wearing all black. He's not wearing sunglasses. This is Chono is just an awesome technical wrestler.
And Shinya Hashimoto, another favorite of this podcast.
Yeah, favorite of this podcast. One of the all-time legends in Japan, in New Japan. And their opponents, talk about all-time legends. It's the giant of a man, Seiji Sakaguchi, and Antonio Inoki, the man that is, was, and will always be New Japan, no matter what happened and what happens in the future. He will always be the guy that is most associated with the company. And the special guest referee is Lou Thez.
Wow. Yeah,
Lou Thez, who helped train Masahiro Chono. So you've got that storyline, Lou Thez passing down the STF to Chono. That somehow felt more meaningful than Chono passing down the STF to Eric
Watts. If you go back to our Clash of the Champions early season 1, that might have been our second episode.
Yes, that's quite the lineage, going down just 1 degree of separation from Lou Thez to Eric Watts.
Great robes by Sakaguchi and Inoki in the back before this match.
Yeah, we get a little backstage interview with the two of them, which actually is much more reminiscent of the setup on All Japan big shows, where you'd see the guys backstage warming up and then their music would hit and they'd come out.
Turns out Chono and Hashimoto have equally cool robes as well. So
yes.
A lot of good robes on display here.
Pomp and circumstance on full display in the main event of the Tokyo Dome.
So they're in the ring. They do the intros. And Inoki throws a kick at Chono during the intro.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of surprising here. I didn't necessarily expect coming into this that there would be that level of obviously in storyline, but heat between wrestlers, and B, that it would be Chono and Inoki.
No. Inoki and Chono start the match grappling. Inoki takes him down by the arm, puts on an arm bar, and then tags in Sakaguchi. Hashimoto's in. He starts laying in kicks in the corner to Sakaguchi, and then Inoki runs in and just drop kicks Hashimoto out of nowhere. Inoki then tags in with Hashimoto. We get We get grappling on the mat. Enoki with a leg lock. Chono tags back in, but Enoki ties up the legs and puts on a bow and arrow.
Yeah,
And
you kind of forget with Enoki, like just he's Antonio Inoki. He's larger than life, and you just the look, just everything that's happened with him through the years. You forget like how great of a pro wrestler he was, like at actually pro wrestling and grappling, and we see so much of that here. The transitions between submissions.
Well, I loved it right here because he's got the bow and arrow on Chono, and then he keeps the legs tied up as he gets out of the hold, and then tags in Sakaguchi.
And even before that, he has an Indian Deathlock on, drops back several times, and then puts the bow and arrow on, and then, as you said, keeps those legs grapevined as he makes the tag.
Yeah, so Enoki, good wrestler, turns out.
Yes. And it's funny because as a kid, like, it's going to sound absolutely blasphemous considering my love of New Japan Pro Wrestling, but as a young kid, first seeing guys from New Japan, I was so annoyed with seeing Enoki because I'm like, why is he beating these guys who are so much better? And then, of course, I quickly realized and understood, like, yeah, he's Antonio Inoki. He is New Japan.
And he doesn't have to do much.
No.
Because every movement, the place is just going nuts because they're seeing Enoki do Enoki things.
Yes, absolutely.
Boston Crab gets put on by Chono. Boston Crab gets put on Chono, and then Hashimoto breaks it up with a stiff kick to the chest.
Yes, as he is known to do. Hashimoto kicks. It's short list for sure as far as hardest, most impressive, least I would want to take if I was a pro wrestler. Absolutely.
Yeah, Chono puts the boots to him and then a hangman neckbreaker. Hashimoto comes in. We get a judo throw of Sakaguchi. Then they have a chop battle.
Yeah, this is a hard chop battle between Sakaguchi and Hashimoto. And Seiji Sakaguchi is a guy who, in later years, you may have seen him. You may be familiar with him as being the very tall man who would come in and do title match proclamations, present the belt to the winner, after he had retired. But he can still go here. It's 1990. It's deep into his career. He would only have 2 more matches in 1990, but one of which, by the way, involved Scott Hall. It was Kengo Kimura. His next match after this was 1 month later, Kengo Kimura and Seiji Sakaguchi taking on Corporal Kirshner and Scott Hall.
Jeez. Sakaguchi and Chono are in. Chono puts on the aforementioned STF. After a rope break, Hashimoto comes back in, half crab on Sakaguchi, drops a couple big elbows, and I love, you've got the Muto power drive elbow, but man, I love a good Hashimoto elbow drop.
Yes, that jumping elbow drop. He kind of like winds his arm up when it's in the air, and it's heavy. Like it's an elbow drop befitting of the size and round nature of Shinya Hashimoto.
They double team him in the corner. Sakaguchi fights free, hits a high knee, and tags in Enoki.
Now, this high knee was awesome. Big running high knee. Like you said, tags in Enoki. Enoki's in, running wild with punches.
The place is going crazy. The place is going nuts for everything here.
This is, as much as Enoki and Chono want to get at each other, this is the thing that the fans wanted to see more than anything was Enoki and Hashimoto. They're fired up. As I said, Enoki's running wild with punches, closed fist punches. Hashimoto catches one and hits him with his DDT in the corner and tags Chono in.
And then Chono puts him in the STF. So Enoki eats the DDT from Hashimoto. Then he's put in the STF by Chono. And then Sakaguchi tags in and he starts working over Chono.
Well, before that, I just wanted to mention the visual, like the historical visual of Masahiro Chono, and a great camera work as always on these New Japan shows. Masahiro Chono has the STF on Antonio Inoki, and Lou Thez is asking Inoki if he's going to give up to Chono's STF. Just a great sort of slice in time here with these 3 men.
Chono fights back, tags in Hashimoto. He hits a kick, tags back in Chono, who hits a flying shoulder block off the top rope.
Then Chono hits a couple awesome running, flying forearms. You forget how just athletic Chono was. Like, I'm not saying he was like Liger or anything, but just the way he moved around the ring pre-neck injury.
Yeah, it's just so different from the Chono that you would see in so many later years there.
And it's amazing how we've talked about it before, his ability to transition and work with what he had after the injury and be a totally different wrestler, but become a much bigger star than he would here, where in so many ways, I remember seeing him like on those super shows and thinking, like, man, this guy is like the Japanese Bret Hart.
Chono misses a drop kick and Enoki tags in. Enoki hits an enziguri, then puts on the octopus hold.
Yeah, so he's hitting all of his stuff right away here. It's big moves. Hashimoto comes in immediately to make the save, though.
An enziguri by Chono on Enoki, and then he puts the octopus hold on Enoki. The people do not approve of this.
No, not at all. Enoki hip tosses out of the octopus hold because damn right he does. He should be able to.
He knows how to get free of that. No problem.
Chono gets up, though, and murders Enoki with a backdrop driver. You can't call this a Saito suplex.
No,
this got imported from All Japan. This is a backdrop driver.
Yes, he goes a backdrop driver, then gets countered with Enoki shifting his weight, landing on top of Chono for 2. Hits it enziguri, covers him, and he pins Chono. Enoki's bleeding from the nose. He's got a huge black eye.
Chono looks like he kicked out at like 3.00001. But yeah, that was the finish.
And Hashimoto is pissed that they lost.
Shoving Enoki.
Trophies are presented. And then after that, Hashimoto comes over. He ends up shaking Enoki's hand after refusing at first. Chono also extends the hand. We get good sportsmanship. We get a generational torch passing almost, right? You've got like just a bridge here between generations, and it's a cool moment in the Tokyo Dome.
Absolutely. It's a great way to end the show. Like you said, everyone in the ring, Enoki with a classic Ich Nissan Da ending, and we fade to black. This show was so much fun.
It was great.
I would, even if you only have New Japan World, still highly recommend checking this out. Go back and watch the junior tag match, and then do whatever you can. Make sure you set aside time to watch the absolute spectacle that was Vader versus Stan Hansen. And then if you can find on the dark web, if you can find those 2 All Japan versus New Japan matches, particularly the match with Tenryu and Choshu opposite of each other in the tag, go out of your way to watch that. Like, this is just big show wrestling at its finest from Japan at a real high point, and with some real unique I don't say curiosities, because I feel like that doesn't do it enough credit, but some real novel stuff here with the New Japan versus All Japan stuff in particular, plus a really fun generational main event.
Can you narrow down a favorite thing on this show?
I mean, there's so much
There's
great
so
stuff
much
on
great
here.
stuff. It's
so
hard.
many great moments, but I think for me, my favorite thing on this show, match-wise, even though it has a count-out finish, is Tenryu and Tiger Mask Misawa versus Choshu and Takano. It's just 19 minutes of pure interpromotional pro wrestling hatred, and the Choshu Tenryu stuff in particular. I don't know that there's been like a rivalry I've enjoyed more as a fan going back and watching it than Choshu versus Tenryu, and they absolutely bring it here. But there's so much other good stuff throughout.
So much good stuff. I love the Choshu Tenryu interactions. I loved the junior tag at the beginning of the show, and I loved the end of with Masa Saito winning the AWA title.
Yes, that's a great call. That's like such a great moment and
a great moment. And yeah, and of course everything about Van Vader and Stan Hansen doing their thing is great. So it's just there's so much great stuff on the show.
Absolutely. I would say a must-watch show. I'm sure if you're listening, you could hear my enthusiasm about this. So hopefully that drives you to check this out, because it's one of those shows that I feel like, particularly the stuff that we really gushed about, it's, if you're a wrestling fan and you like to take in things from different eras, different places, this feels like one of those shows you need to scratch off your bucket list of watching.
Worst thing on this show, not a lot to choose from.
There's really, honestly, no, I feel like it's just least good things. I mean, the match that made the least impression on me was probably the I don't know, because you still got to see Hase do Hase things. I would say probably the Hashimoto Dr. Death match wasn't really much. I enjoyed, as I said earlier, the Reinkins Zangief match more. Everything else pretty much had something you could sink your teeth into. Even as we said, the very good Young Lion style opener with Izuka and the future El Samurai.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I mean, Kateo and Bigelow was nothing.
Yeah,
I mean,
that wasn't much.
Wasn't much, but no, I think you're right. My least favorite match was Dr. Death. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to call it a podcast. You can interact with the show via Twitter at WrestleAtRandom. Same thing for Instagram, Facebook.com/WrestlingAtRandom as well. You can subscribe to our Patreon to get bonus content every single week. Additional episodes. These are episodes you haven't heard. And if you sign up today, you unlock the entire back catalog of all the bonus content. You can do that at patreon.com/WrestlingAtRandom. Or if you're an Apple Podcast subscriber, click on the subscribe button. The bonus content unlocks. And yeah, it's all there. Patreon has some additional features. You can be the randomizer. You can choose what show. You can be the executive producer. You choose what show we watch, and we've got a couple of those coming up here in the next few weeks on the Patreon, on the paid feed. If we're behind some other paywall, same thing goes. All that bonus content is there. We've got hours and hours and hours of additional content you have not heard yet. If you just go sign up and unlock all of that bonus content. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to call it a podcast. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. And one other thing I did want to just briefly mention as we leave is that, believe it or not, Vader and Hansen, many years later, would go on to team together in the twilight of Stan Hansen's active career. Vader, when he had his resurgence in All Japan, teamed in the World Tag League with Stan Hansen, I believe in 1999 or 2000. I believe 2000, if I'm not mistaken.
And with that, we're wrapping it up. I want to thank everyone for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.